Hello and welcome to our session. My name is Kelly Sorah.
And I'm Kelly Sorah.
And we're both on the faculty of the University of Virginia's College at Wise.
And we'd like to share with you a method of record keeping we've developed throughout the years within our own private lesson studios.
I'm sure you've had the experiences in your applied music studio in which the student might say something like, I forgot I was supposed to practice that, or I didn't bring my practice record to my lesson today.
Or maybe you even said, I'm sure I assigned that etude last week, right? Or I think I misplaced your practice record.
Or maybe we both say,
I forgot to write that down.
Existing methods use practice logs or time cards that focus on quantity over quality. These practice logs give students the opportunity to falsify those records, and students may also begin to equate time with progress. The more I practice, the better I'll get.
Also, sometimes the professor will make follow-up notes after a student's lesson. However, these may be composed in haste and remain incomplete. Also, making notes after the lesson may result in errors or complete omissions.
So we think there's a need for a new method of record keeping. So this new method needs to keep information close at hand for both the student and the instructor, needs to allow for more frequent collaboration and communication between the student and the instructor. It's a method for collecting audio and video excerpts as evidence of progress with modern technology.
This method is also designed to display semester grades so students are always aware of their academic status, allows for automatically calculating semester grades, and is a great method for archiving longitudinal student progress throughout the semester or even the complete period of study.
And lastly, this new method should focus on reflection and analysis. The self-reflection component of our new model is important because it enhances the learning experience. Self-reflection encourages critical thought, and students who reflect upon past practices are more aware in their future practices. And this awareness permits deliberate practice, and deliberate practice produces results. As you see in the cycle here, deliberate practice with reflection creates awareness that then cycles back to practice, and the circuit begins again. Our model is not completely original. For many years, I've referenced Simon Horsey's website, essentialmusicpractice.com, and some of the resources he provides there. You'll see in our model, the introduction and goals was modeled off of his resource, along with the practice record format that we use. Simon actually says at the bottom of his PDF files, copy it, modify it, pass it on, and use it. And we encourage the same with this process. The University of Virginia's College at Wise became an all-iPad institution in the fall of 2019, and faculty were encouraged to find new ways in which to use this technology in teaching our students. Along with Senior Professional Learning Specialist at Apple, Rachel Hume, which was assigned to our institution, I created this document as a part of my application for the Apple Learning Academy that was to happen in spring 2020. You will also see the resource for our jury system, which we use at our institution, cited at the bottom of the page.
We originally developed this method of practice record keeping using Apple numbers, but has been migrated for use in Microsoft Excel and Google Sheets. So let's take a closer look at these documents.
We'll first take a look at the numbers version of the applied trumpet record. As we look across the top, we'll see all the different sheets from introduction to foundation and lesson demo, and then we'll get to work with the lessons, 14 of those incomplete here, a departmental tab early on, one later on, our jury tab, and then our recap for the very end. We'll take a look at those in a moment. First, in order to collaborate with your students, we'll need to click on the Collaborate icon here. That brings up a dialog box to allow us to send that invitation via email or any other method. I always choose email as it's more professional. Who can access it? I will choose anyone with the link, can make changes. We want them to be able to type into this document, and I'll add a password so that not just anyone has access to this document. Only those with the password can access it. Once I click on share, it will automate an email to that student. The student will click the link and you'll be connected on the document. On the introduction page, we'll find an instructional video for the student that actually lives in YouTube, but is embedded within this document. So if we hover over and click on this, or tap on the iPad,
hello, Dr. Sorah here. I'd like to take you on a walk through our Applied Trumpet Semester Record document. As UVA-Wise is an all-iPad institution, and all of our faculty and students have iPads for teaching and learning, we'll take advantage of this technology and use this collaborative numbers spreadsheet document to keep track of your work throughout the semester in applied music.
So that's about an 11-minute video that includes all the information the students need to be able to access and to use this document. The nice thing is that it's embedded in the document from YouTube, so it takes up no room in the document, doesn't bloat the size of this document. Next, we'll take a look at the foundation page. This foundation page includes a few questions, getting to know you type questions that I borrowed from Simon Horsey's documents, and these help me get to know the student a little bit better, especially if they're first year students. I get to know a little bit about their background. It sets up some prompts for dialogue during our first lesson and helps us to set some goals for short term, medium term, and long term. This is also useful for the more advanced student because those short term, medium term, and long term goals obviously change quite often. So it's nice to revisit this at least once a semester. The lesson demo page provides an example of what a completed lesson record and practice record should look like. At the top of the page, we'll see, again, redundant instructions for those visual learners that would prefer to read, or those who may not have internet access. They can read the instructions about how to use these forms. Below the instructions section, we'll find a sample lesson record that illustrates what a complete record should look like. This is the portion that I complete during the lesson, and rows include scales, arpeggios, technical studies, lip slurs. We have 3 rows for etudes and repertoire. Then we have a section for other. It's things that don't fit into the other categories, plus other things that we might have discovered during the lesson. For example, in this one we talk about a third tuning slide that's frozen in position and needs some attention. Also, you'll see a note of the student needs to make a recording of an etude to submit by Friday. And we'll talk about how students would do that in just a moment. Next, we see the assignments for next lesson. They're always here. Students have access to them since we're collaborating on their iPad, on their phone, on their computer, whatever devices, electronic devices they might have on them. So it's not going to get lost. And students will not forget what page they were supposed to practice out of the Arbenz book, for example. At the bottom, there's a section for comments. These are usually wrap-up comments at the end of the lesson or at the conclusion of the lesson that I'll type up some things just to summarize the lesson if I haven't entered it in the previous sections. At the top right here, we'll see a little black circle with a music note. Its purpose is as a placeholder where I can post recordings of the student's lesson or segments of their lesson for their review later on, or especially as this is a portfolio to look at as we are at the end of the semester and we want to go back and see what progress we've made. So I would suggest, if possible, to hyperlink something so the document size doesn't become bloated with lots of recordings. Snippets would be fine, audio snippets of recording. Video is fine as well, and that's nice to have archival, but if it's not hyperlinked from somewhere else, it may really bloat the size of this document if we're looking at 14 lessons, departmentals, and all that. So we have to be careful of how much we include in this document. As we scroll to the bottom, we'll also see the lesson grade for the student. This is the grade that I've assigned them for this one particular lesson. Our grading policy is indicated in the syllabus, so students are aware of that 1 to 10 grading scale. As we look at the bottom of the page here, we will see the student practice record. This is the portion that students will complete throughout the week, and I can review them at any moment because we're collaborating on the document, or we can review them when they come back to their next lesson. Yes, and I know there's a lot of information here, but I'm a firm believer that starting out with your first year students, being able to plan their practice times and to reflect upon those practice times will reap rewards and more efficient practice as they matriculate through the program. Looking to the left-hand side, we see a column that shows the date of the lesson, the day after the lesson, and I really like this idea of showing that the lesson is coming. So we have 5 days before, it's the countdown, 4 days before, 3 before, 2 before, and the day before the lesson. Next, we'll see the next column is the time and setting. So it's important to see when they're practicing and where they're practicing so that we can know what is maybe their most optimal time to practice and the location so that we know if it's a distraction-free environment or if there's a possibility of distractions. So really the meat of this is looking at the practice targets and the reflection. This is where the real learning takes place. So I asked that students start backwards on planning their practice targets. So if they are supposed to have their Clark 1 exercises 10 through 15 prepared up to =110 for their lesson, then that's what it should be the day before the lesson, at least the day before the lesson. So the students, this particular student has planned backwards. So we have 110, 2 days before the lesson, we're at 100. Didn't practice those on the 3 days before the lesson. 4 days before the lesson, we were at 90. 5 days before the lesson, we didn't practice them. And the day after the lesson, we were at 80. And we started the week, the day of the lesson, after the lesson, at =70. And you can see that also, if you look at the details there, that the other assignments are followed in the same manner. So this sets students up for success because they have practice targets, they have finite, detailed practice targets in which to achieve throughout the week and every day. Rather than saying it has to be done at 110 by next lesson, by next Friday, we say by Saturday it needs to be this, by Sunday it needs to be this, and we have progressive development of skills. And for the final column, reflection and results, I advocate that students take the last 5 minutes of their practice session, put the horn away, and to reflect a bit on what they have done during that practice session. What went well, what didn't go well, and if they know, why did it go well, or what caused them not to achieve their goals. As instructors, this is great information for us to read, so we can look through and we can see more details on a day-by-day basis rather than just asking the student when they return to their next lesson, how'd it go this week? Well, now we can see the details from every practice session, from every day. Just as a medical doctor might stand at the door and review your documents before he walks in, knocks on the door and walks in, we can do the same thing. As we're collaborating at this document, I can look maybe 5 minutes before the student comes in for their next lesson, and I can see what progress they've made, what setbacks they've had during the week, and be prepared to discuss those so that lesson time is more efficient. So taking 5 minutes off at the end of a previous lesson might benefit in me being more prepared for the next lesson and being more efficient. And the placeholder here is for students to record anything that I might assign them to be submitted midterm or is just something to hold for our portfolio. Or students sometimes have these breakthroughs in the practice room and they play something very well. And when they come back to the next lesson, they're not able to replicate that. We've all had those experiences in which we are in the lesson and we don't perform as well as we did in the practice room. Well, we can collect evidence of that with videos here from the iPad, from the computer. We can record directly there. We can record videos or audio examples to place by this placeholder. In this particular example, the student would record the assignment I made here to make a recording of the Snedeker beginning to A by Friday, upload it and place it by the blue 8th note to the right of your practice record. So that would be the assignment for the student to place that here. And at the bottom of the student practice record, we have an area for students to indicate their level of preparation for the lesson. 1 being very poor, unprepared, 10 being they're ready to go in and nail it. So they can do that. There's a little stepper here that they can change those numbers. As we continue to navigate the document, we'll see from lesson 1 through lesson 6 here, they're all the same. These are just blank documents. These actually have grades in here as a demo to show you the recap in the end. But the document that you'll get will be blank, so you can start from scratch. At our institution, students perform twice per semester in our departmental course. Some of you may call that studio performance class or student recital. In this case, we use the same rubric that we use for our jury performance and assessment during these departmental performances, so that students will be familiar with this document by the time they get to their jury, and they'll know what's expected of them. So as the students perform, we mark 3 boxes for each of these 3 rows, and we place those scores in the boxes here. Notice the scores do not add up. This is a 12-point scale. This is a 10-point scale. That's what we need for our calculations. Students can also provide their feedback on how they thought they performed, quantitatively and qualitatively here. A place for my comments and the student comments, which is great as this is a portfolio so that we can look back on these comments on this performance at the end of the semester. This happens twice during our semester. Notice we have a total of 14 lessons. Most of the time we get 12 in there, but sometimes there are 14. So we've added more. It's easier to just go in and delete these than to create more. There is a second departmental performance toward the end of the semester. And then we move to the jury. By this point, students are already familiar with this jury rubric. They've already performed twice with departmental on this rubric, and they understand what is expected of them. So at this point, students will have to take screenshots or take photos of their jury score sheets from all the faculty and place them here in this gallery. You'll notice that the student has posted here the front page of the rubric, which I've assessed their performance, and also the reverse side with my comments for improvement. Beyond that, the student will type in or write text in here in which they will provide feedback and reflection upon their jury performance, what went well, what didn't go well, and what might have prevented them from being super successful because of that. And then we come to the recap page. I love this page because it provides a great recap of our work throughout the semester. As we take a look, we have each of the lessons' departmental performances across the first column, and the grades that the students have received from those with an average at the bottom. It is not necessary to go in and type each of these grades. They are auto-populated from the previous lesson 1. So if you look in lesson 1, I assign the student the grade of a 9. When I type that in, it auto-populates this cell here and follows suit all the way through. So just be careful that you don't delete the formulas if you're using this document. Likewise, with the level of preparation for the students, when they enter numbers on each of those pages and they assess their departmental performance, those all auto-populate here and come to an average. With our system, I'm sure yours is different. You may need to play with the formulas a little bit here, but the average of the lesson grade and the level of preparation come to the grand average here. Then the student performs the jury. The grade on the jury happened to be an A- because they received an A- and an 81, which is a B- throughout the semester. I lowered their grade from A- to B+. Those are our jury policies, and I'm sure yours are different as well, so this may need some adaptation. The next section here is just for my knowledge between the difference and this correlation. It shows me how well we agree on grading each week with my grade and their level of preparation. What is the difference in those? Sometimes we grade equally, and sometimes there's discrepancy. Here there was a discrepancy of 2 at that point, and that might be a lesson that we should revisit to see why I thought they got an 8 and why they thought they got a 6. And then we take an average of those here. I have included the correlation between grade and level of preparation here as an indicator of our agreement between the student and myself of their level as they go throughout the semester. So I want to see that we're in agreement that when I assign them a 9, that they assign somewhere close. And if I drop their score next week to a 6, that they follow suit and they move in the same direction. If they think that they got a 10 the next week and I assign them a 6, then there probably needs to be a discussion about quality control, and level of expectations. So by this staying green and this being at a 0.84, which is close to a 1, we're in good shape. If this should drop below 0.5 or even to the negatives, this will change colors and indicate that there's a problem. We need to have some type of discussion about quality control and level of expectations. And the chart you see here is a great indicator of semester progress. We can see at a glance the progress the student has made throughout the semester, with grades for each lesson and every performance assessment. We can also see the student's level of preparation, which is also indicated in the light gray behind the dark gray. So we can see that we are fairly in agreement of the troughs and the crests throughout the semester. And this page provides a great recap of all we have done throughout the semester. As it develops through the semester, it's great to reference, but especially looking back on the semester in retrospect, it's a great resource.
The next portions of our demonstration are intended for those who prefer Microsoft or Google platforms. However, be sure to watch all of the previous demonstration and Apple numbers for a complete overview and details on how these documents are intended to be used. This is just a demonstration of the differences among the formats. First, we'll look at Microsoft Excel. You can collaborate on this document if it is stored in OneDrive and shared. Here you can see the option to share. Edits can be made in the browser or desktop versions when the collaborative document is accessed. You can also share in a box folder, Google Drive, or other cloud option for collaboration. Let's take a look at Google Sheets. You can see that this is actually a collaborative document able to be shared, viewed, and edited in real time. Here you can see the share option, and you'll notice that mine is private, but in order to share, all you have to do is enter the people and email addresses you'd like to share with. Also, you can see when edits were made in the menu. On the introduction page, you'll notice that you'll need to click on the link in order to open the tutorial on how to use these forms. Unfortunately, in Google Sheets, you're not able to embed links or hyperlinks on images. Here at the bottom of the page, we can go to our lesson demo. And just like with Microsoft Excel, you can always click and drag to reorganize your tabs, or delete them altogether. Here's our sample student lesson and their practice record. And again, to embed a link or a hyperlink, it must be an online URL. It cannot be linked directly to your hard drive, and you'd have to replace the image with the hyperlink. If you would like to include more material, you can always use Google Drive or another cloud option and share it with your students. The tabs at the bottom also include our departmental page, your jury page, and the semester recap. And just like with numbers and Excel, all the scores are auto-populated and averaged. No matter which platform you'd prefer, this method of record keeping for your own studio can be modified, adapted, and shared with faculty and students at your institution.
As with any advancement in technology or new method, there are going to be limitations. So the caveats we've discovered so far include the dishonest student. This is a collaborative document, and at this point, the student can come in and change anything that I've written. I can actually change things that students have written. So we have to have a method of, or a sense of trust among us to make this work. One solution for that, the Apple numbers document does not keep track of changes and when they're made and who makes those changes. But by embedding this in a box folder, we do see when changes are made and who has made those changes.
You could also use the same method using Microsoft Excel by uploading that document into a box folder to see when edits and other changes have been made. However, with Google Sheets, you can actually see who is on the document at any given time and see when edits were made and what the edits are. There may be an issue with limited technology both for the professor and for the student. To rectify this issue, All you would need to do is print the documents you intend to use to keep track of each lesson and distribute them to your students on a weekly basis.
It's not ideal, but it would work.
There's also a learning curve and a time requirement involved with learning this new method. The investment of time, planning, and reflection yields more efficient and meaningful experiences, but this may require you to end your lesson just a few minutes early in order to have meaningful notes and record keeping. Depending on your own class schedules, jury system, and grading protocols, this method is really adaptable for pretty much any scenario.
And as an added bonus, at the end of the semester, you can use the document to look back at the progress made throughout the semester. We can look at audio recordings, possibly video recordings, and the recap sheet shows a great recap of scores and a graph that shows progress throughout the semester. At this point, we'd love to take your suggestions or any questions that you might have. Feel free to reach out to us now or at any point in the future. You see our email addresses on the screen currently. We'd love to know how you've modified and put this practice into use in your own studios, and would love to have your suggestions of how we might be able to improve the document itself. Thank you so much for attending our session today, and we wish you the very best.